Hi, I'm Eric Gardner. I'm the CEO of Naval Air Facility at Tsugi, and I'm here today to talk to you about Operation Tomodachi. That was the operation that preceded the Great East Japan earthquake, March 11th, 2011, and what we did on NAF at Tsugi as part of the overall effort from all U.S. forces that responded to Operation Tomodachi. Overview-wise, just kind of looking at where we were pre-March 11th, the initial actions that we did, the three lines of operation that I continuously talk to my staff about: humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, military-assisted voluntary departure of dependents, which actually ended up being the largest evacuation of military personnel since Mount Pinatubo. And then foreign consequence management, or decontamination, which is something that you don't really plan for a lot, but we ended up doing a good bit about that. What we did, where we are now, and then some lessons learned. Kind of walk through the timeline, first of all, of where we were pre-disaster, and kind of give you an idea where Atsugi is and what we were affected by. We're on the island of Honshu within the Kanto Plain. Different military organizations also within the Kanto Plain: Yokosuka Naval Base, Camp Zama Army Garrison, and Yokota Air Base, all within 40-50 miles of downtown Tokyo. The epicenter was about 180 miles away from Atsugi, and then the Fukushima nuclear power plant, again, about 180 miles from Atsugi. So that's kind of where we were. Beforehand, in different things that they had done prior to that, as far as preparing for something like this. When I first got to Atsugi, one of the main issues that we have is DPRI, Defense Posture Review Initiative, where the fixed wing from Atsugi are going to move down to Iwakuni. A lot of cities around Atsugi are looking at that going, as well as back inside the Beltway, Atsugi's losing Carrier Wing 5, Atsugi's going to shut down, we're going to take over, we don't need it anymore, so Atsugi's on the BRAC list. That was what I walked into in December 2008. We've tried to change that calculus, tried to show how important, how strategic the airfield is, how strategic the location is, as well as what we do for the Japan in the defense of Japan and maintain security in East Asia. We also have a main runway, 8,000-foot runway in the middle of Tokyo metro area, which encompasses about 30 million people within a 60-mile radius, and then around the base, over 6 million people within 10 miles, over 2 million within 3 miles of the base. So very congested. So when something happens, like an earthquake, as I was telling all the mayors around me, you're not going to be able to drive, you're not going to be able to move things. I've got runways, I've got helicopters, I've got ability to assist you and everyone else within this, around in the Kanto Plain. So we made it a point to go out to all of those mayors and try to sign memorandums of understanding for disaster response. 9 cities, over 6 million people. I've signed MOUs with 8 of those mayors, and we're working on the last one right now. So they understand, they've been on our base, they've been through our EOC, they've seen our capabilities, we briefed them on ours, we've gone out to their cities and got briefed on their capabilities. So again, we've had a really, really good relationship with the surrounding cities around Atsugi. So that's kind of where we went in on, again, pre-311. Within Emergency Management Office, CNIC doesn't really fund you too well there. I had one contractor who is the EMO. I had one MLC, that's a master labor contractor, a Japanese worker, paid by the Japanese government but working for the U.S. government. And then I had one chief that was TAD. Okay, so March 11th, about 2:46, about ready to leave the office and go home and change into SDBs because all the COs, XOs, and CMCs are grabbing their Sailors of the Year and heading down to Yokosuka for the big Sailor of the Year banquet. Walk outside, the earth starts to shake, see ripples in the sidewalk, in the concrete, poles are going, and it kind of goes on for quite a while. Not overly strong, probably about a 5.2-ish on at Sugi itself, but again, a ways away from the epicenter. I know those that were up in Misawa felt it much greater up there, and again, we felt it, looked around, nothing's fallen down, nothing big, so yeah, it's an earthquake, but we'll figure it out. Still need to go home and change because I got that Sailor of the Year banquet going on. Once we started seeing on the TV, the Japanese TV, NHK, Asahi, Fuji TV, and saw some of the shaking and the damage in Tokyo, first of all, and then looking further to the north, realized, hey, this isn't just a small little shake. This was a pretty major earthquake, and we needed to start figuring out what was going on. We went home, didn't change into SCVs, changed into a flight suit, headed down to air operations, first of all, because in that time frame, even before the tsunami had hit or was coming in, found out that both Narita and Haneda, the two major airports around Tokyo, had some issues and were closing, and there was aircraft in the air. I went down to our runway, or our air operations. We had a couple Air Wing 5 aircraft in the air, made a quick run, my Air Ops personnel, quick run on the runway, no cracks, no problem. Runway was still open. The CAG-5 airplanes landed without a problem. But within an hour, we're looking, and there's 747s flying over the airfield at about 1,000 feet looking for a place to land. We were open. We had called up Yokota Air Base, the Air Force Air Base. They've got two runways, 10 and 12,000 feet. They ended up taking about 8 commercial aircraft there. We did not, again, but we were open. So as we're starting to see, hey, there's, and then we, again, watch on TV, see this massive tsunami that everybody else watched. Tsunami wave probably over 80 feet in many areas. Traveled at 500 miles an hour, traveled over 7 miles inland, entire cities, entire towns, totally devastated and gone. At least 4 trains that were going along the coast, never to be found. Just so massive amounts of loss of life, probably 25,000 at least. So again, not knowing all of that at the time, but hearing about that. Okay, so we set up our EOC quickly down at Air Ops. It's a small room, but it was we didn't know what was going to end up happening with those aircraft. So I quickly grabbed staff. We set it up down there, thinking that might be one of the main things that we could provide was right there at the air terminal. Then we also, again, realizing the extent of the earthquake, start looking at facilities, start making notifications, trying to get personal accountability. Where's everyone at? What's it look like? What are we doing? So all of that is going on within the first couple hours. We'd already started to make plans for the morning time frame to set up the EOC back at our alternate EOC or my conference room, because as we're watching it, we realize this thing's going to be around for a while. We're going to have some issues here. So again, making plans to set up the alternate EOC, or would be the primary EOC for Tomodachi. One of the first things that happened later on that night, got a call from the mayor of Ebina City. I had signed one of those MOUs with him. He called and said, I've got a city that's my sister city up in Tohoku region, Miyagi Prefecture, Shiroishi City. They've got major damage from the tsunami. They need some assistance. I have food, I have water, I have rice, I have things that I want to get up to them. Can you help me? So, can you help them? Are you allowed to do that? I said, yes, let me see what I can do. So, again, Atsugi being a small little community, I called CAG. Hey, CAG, you got any airplanes that I can utilize to take up some supplies up to a city? Well, let me see. Called CTF-70, who was actually Admiral Cloyd at the time, now Admiral Cloyd CNFJ and my boss as well. So Admiral Cloyd said, well, let me check, and we called 7th Fleet, Admiral Van Buskirk at the time. But within a few hours, the mission was approved that we could fly 2 of these helicopters up to help out with Shiroishi City. The next morning, Saturday the 12th, those supplies came on board, loaded them up into 2 helicopters. They flew off and went up and landed in a soccer field, dropped off 3,700 pounds of rice, water, everything, to waiting officials, the mayor of the Shiroishi sitting there waiting. All of that happened less than 24 hours less than 24 hours from the beginning of the earthquake. So as those helos landed, as those supplies are being transferred off into Shiroishi City, those end up being the first supplies, relief supplies, that anybody delivered, Japanese, American, regardless. So having those MOUs in place, being able to take this mission, get it up there within 24 hours, that was the beginning of Operation Tomodachi. We develop start to develop a battle rhythm by the Saturday morning. Checking out, first of all, status of the facilities. Public Works goes around, checks out all of the different facilities. Is there any damage? Is there any crackage? Is there any problems? We'd already worked on the not only personnel accountability, but now getting it into NFAS and seeing where we are on that. And with that first mission, HADR-wise, was like, okay, we can be the logistics hub. As we've talked about all along, let's push ourselves as the HADR logistics hub for this major mission that's going to be going on. A couple other things were in dynamics in place. The USS Ronald Reagan was on its way over on deployment. We didn't know exactly what their purpose was going to be, but we're getting word from 7th Fleet that possible fly-off of all Air Wing 14 personnel or aircraft, and thinking in the Banda Aceh, Indonesia, Lincoln model, fly those off, utilize Ronald Reagan as a after landing area rescue platform. That ended up not happening, but we did utilize HS-4 and then Ronald Reagan, at least the aircraft stayed on. Ronald Reagan obviously was part of the relief effort there. So again, within that first day, EOC stood up, rotation started, pushing up to CNFJ, pushing up to USFJ, United States Forces Japan, and 7th Fleet. Atsugi's ready, we're open, and we're ready to help. Okay, so this actually came to fruition as far as us being a HADR hub. We had, within a day, basically, we were starting to get calls from HMM 265, H-46 Squadron down in Okinawa. Marines that they were going to come up. They were going to come to Atsugi. There were C-130 squadrons that were going to come into Atsugi. VRC-30, both GW and Ronald Reagan COS, we were going to have those here. So again, we're starting to build what we were going to utilize as our logistics hub. HSL-51, based on Atsugi, and HS-14 were going to be our primary assets to utilize as well. Following the disaster at Fukushima, which again happens a day after this, and a couple days later, 7th Fleet puts a 150-mile radius around Fukushima that nobody can fly in. So flights from Atsugi end up having to go out over the Sea of Japan to the north to get into where most of the disaster area was. So the decision was made about 4 or 5 days after the earthquake to move HSL-51 and HS-14 up to Misawa. Misawa had actually had some major damage, didn't have power at the time. We're able to get some emergency generators going and eventually come online and accept HSL-51 and HS-14, and they remained up there for several weeks. All told, and a couple of pictures from the relief supply or relief effort. One of the interesting things, stories-wise, but from the HMM 265 and our own CAG-5 aircraft crew, they go and land in these soccer fields. They're loaded up with supplies. As they're pulling them off, the city officials and others are gathering the supplies and seeing what was on there. At some point, as they're pulling everything off, several times the city officials went, okay, that's enough. We've got enough. I've got another city and another town, village about 20 clicks away from here that doesn't have anything. Please go over there and drop stuff off with them. And the difference between Katrina and Haiti and the Japanese people is 180 out. So it was a pleasure taking HADR supplies up to them and watching the orderliness that they would accept it, as well as taking care of all Japanese. So the Japanese way is the greater is better than the individual. So it's really everyone wanted to help. Summary-wise, for our HADR missions, we flew about almost 400 missions out of Atsugi, and that doesn't include all those other ones from Misawa. But 1.8 million pounds of HADR supplies came in to Atsugi, and then we pushed those forward up into Tohoku. As those HS-14 aircraft were going up on March 12th, the first one, my CMC says, hey, we need to start collecting goods and supplies. PW gave us a bunch of tri-walls, and we started putting those out in front of the exchange, in front of the commissary, around the base. And by Sunday afternoon, 9 tri-walls were filled. Monday morning, volunteers were asked, came down to air operations, opened up all of those 12 tri-walls, 9 to 12 tri-walls, and then started dividing up water, baby food, clothes, packaging them up. And so again, within 2 or 3 days, we had a lot of supplies on the base. Cities around us found out about what we did on March 12th, as well as hearing about all of this other things, and we started getting supplies from everybody. 18 different local cities gave us supplies. I had met the vice president of Coca-Cola Japan at a USO gala a couple months prior. He called me up and said, hey, Coca-Cola wants to donate water. We don't have a way to get it. Can you help us out? I said, sure, I'll see what I can do. Next day, 3 truckloads of water come on that they donate and that we try to move up. So we end up putting it on to, at one point then, oh, by the way, I can just fly up there and drop stuff off kind of goes away, and the ATO begins to be built. The USAID and comes in with their DART team, and ODACA funds start to flow. The embassy gets involved, and so hey, let me just go help out randomly goes away, and you got to start planning the missions. That was going on. Some of the water that we were collecting from Koch, trying to get that onto ATOs and get those onto plans, it worked, but it was hard. They didn't want them at first. We pushed it. So again, over 1.8 million pounds of supplies from relief organizations, local population, Atsugi population, local corporations, everyone comes into Atsugi and send it out. So again, first line of operation, HADR, pushing that out.